Did you discuss this factor? I mean,
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
You didn't think
I
he
didn't
was,
care.
did you, Heather?
Kathy Lee has a great marriage.
Tony Randall wasn't just another actor. He was a legend who brought charm, wit, and unforgettable performances to the screen for more than 6 decades. Best remembered as Felix Unger in The Odd Couple, he earned both critical acclaim and the love of audiences everywhere. But while his career shone brightly, his personal life sparked endless whispers, especially his unconventional marriages. For years, rumors swirled around his choices, from a long first marriage without children to a second marriage with a woman 50 years younger. Now, 20 years after his passing, Tony Randall's wife is finally breaking her silence and revealing the truth behind the speculation. Before we begin, if you are a fan of Tony Randall, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Tony Randall, born Ari Leonard Rosenberg on February 26, 1920 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, grew up in a world that often felt too small for his restless imagination. His parents, Moshe Rosenberg, an art and antiques dealer, and Julia Finston, provided stability, but their modest household couldn't quite understand the boy whose heart leaned toward the stage. A single performance by a touring ballet company lit a spark in him that nothing could extinguish. From that moment, theater was not just an interest, it was his calling. But for young Ari, this passion was also a burden. His gift for mimicry, which later defined his craft, unsettled teachers at Tulsa Central High School, who dismissed it as disruptive. At home, the situation was no easier. His father, a pragmatic man steeped in the tangible world of business, found it impossible to comprehend his son's artistic hunger. To Moshe, acting was frivolous, a dream without foundation. The distance between father and son widened, leaving Randall feeling like an outsider in his own family. Still, he never wavered. After high school, he briefly enrolled at Northwestern University, studying speech and drama, but the siren call of New York soon pulled him east. At the neighborhood playhouse, under mentors like Sanford Meisner and Martha Graham, Randall began shaping the instincts that had once been treated as flaws. Yet the shadow of those early struggles never fully left him. Life took a dramatic turn when he set aside his artistic dreams to serve 5 years in the U.S. Army during World War II. The discipline of military life was far from the stage, but it gave him resilience and perspective. When the war ended, he found himself starting over, tentatively stepping back into the theater at a small playhouse in Maryland. The stage became his refuge once again, a place where he could shake off the weight of uniformity and rediscover the joy of becoming someone else. With renewed conviction, Randall finally returned to New York, prepared to chase the dream that had survived misunderstandings at home, years of war, and the lingering ache of feeling different. It was the beginning of a journey that would take him far beyond the boy Tulsa never quite understood. It didn't take long for Tony Randall to find his way into the world of performance. One of his earliest breaks came when he voiced Reggie in the 1940s radio drama I Love a Mystery. The role was small, but for Randall it was a spark, the first sign that the dreams he had clung to through years of doubt might actually take root. From there, the long road from obscurity to recognition slowly began to unfold. Not in bursts of overnight fame, but in the steady, patient climb of a man who truly loved his craft. By the mid-1940s, Randall had settled in New York, determined to make the stage his home. In 1946, he toured with the Barretts of Wimpole Street, performing alongside the legendary Katharine Cornell. Soon after, Cornell cast him again in Antony and Cleopatra from 1947 to 48, where he shared the stage with Charlton Heston and Maureen Stapleton. These experiences were more than just roles. They were lessons, each one sharpening his instincts, giving him a place among the theater community that was finally beginning to take notice. Television arrived as a new frontier in the early 1950s, and Randall, ever adaptable, stepped into it. He appeared in One Man's Family, but it was his turn as history teacher Harvey Westcott on Mr. Peepers from 1952 to 1955 that marked his true breakthrough. With warmth, wit, and a gentle charm, Randall showed audiences he could embody characters who felt real, relatable, and endlessly endearing. Still, the theater called to him. In 1954, he replaced Gig Young in the play O Men, O Women, but it was the 1955 Broadway hit Inherit the Wind that transformed him from a promising actor into a critically acclaimed one. As cynical journalist E.K. Hornbeck, Modeled after H.L. Mencken, Randall delivered a performance that critics hailed, proving he had the range to move between humor, intellect, and intensity. Hollywood soon followed. His film debut came in O Men, O Women in 1957, but it was his role opposite Jane Mansfield in Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter that cemented his arrival on the big screen. He showed a versatility that surprised many, shifting from comedy in Rock Hunter to dramatic depth in No Down Payment the same year. By then, Tony Randall was no longer an unknown hopeful. He was becoming a star. Even in setbacks, his talent refused to be dimmed. By the end of the 1950s, Tony Randall had carved out a unique place in American entertainment. He was a face familiar on Broadway, television, and film. A man whose career was built not on sudden bursts of fame, but on years of persistence, resilience, and a love for performing that carried him through triumphs and disappointments alike. His star was rising, but beneath it all remained the boy from Tulsa. Once misunderstood, now finally finding a stage big enough to hold his dreams. Through the late 1950s and into the 1960s, Tony Randall's presence in Hollywood grew steadily, shaping him into one of the most dependable and versatile actors of his time. What set him apart was his uncanny ability to drift effortlessly between lighthearted comedy and more dramatic fare, never allowing himself to be confined to a single mold. In 1959, he charmed audiences alongside Debbie Reynolds in The Mating Game, where his endearing blend of awkwardness and sincerity proved irresistible. That same year, he joined Doris Day and Rock Hudson in Pillow Talk, a sparkling romantic comedy that became a sensation. The chemistry among the trio was undeniable, and Randall went on to reunite with Day and Hudson in Lover Come Back and Send Me No Flowers, cementing his status as a master of urbane, witty humor. Yet his talents reached far beyond romantic comedies. He appeared in television specials such as The Secret of Freedom and The Man in the Moon, showing he could thrive across media. His turn as the king in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn revealed a darker edge, while his chilling performance in Alfred Hitchcock's Hangover episode shocked audiences with its intensity, exposing the rawness beneath his polished exterior. Perhaps his most daring feat came in 1964 with Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, where Randall inhabited 8 wildly different roles, from the enigmatic Dr. Lao himself to mythical figures like Pan and Medusa. The performance became one of his defining achievements, proof of his boundless imagination and commitment to storytelling. As the 1960s unfolded, Randall balanced comedy and drama with grace. He sparred with a mischievous genie in The Brass Bottle, donned the mantle of Hercule Poirot in The Alphabet Murders, and continued his partnership with Doris Day and Rock Hudson in their final collaboration. He never abandoned the stage either, briefly returning to Broadway and later appearing in heartfelt television projects like The Littlest Angel. Tony Randall married his first wife, Florence Gibbs, in 1938, long before Hollywood fame found him. Their marriage was quiet and enduring, lasting over 50 years until her passing in 1992. Though the couple never had children, Florence remained his anchor through the struggles of his early career and the whirlwind of success that followed. Her death left Randall devastated, marking one of the most heartbreaking chapters of his otherwise celebrated life. The relationship between Tony Randall and Heather Harlan became one of the most talked about chapters of his life, not because of scandal, but because of the extraordinary gap between them. Born 50 years apart, Tony in 1920, Heather in 1970, their marriage in 1995 startled many. He was 75, a seasoned star with decades of fame behind him. She was just 25 at the very start of her journey. The age difference sparked curiosity, gossip, and doubt. Some wondered if such a union could be built on love, while others questioned Heather's motives in marrying a man whose career had long since secured him a place in Hollywood history. Yet beyond the chatter, their relationship revealed a far different reality. Those who knew them spoke of warmth, humor, and a shared tenderness that defied the cynicism surrounding them. Tony himself often described their bond with quiet pride, emphasizing not the years that separated them, but the values and joys they shared. Together, they built a life that felt surprisingly ordinary, filled with conversation, laughter, and the grounding love of family. Their marriage brought new meaning to Tony's later years, with the arrival of 2 children, Julia Lorette Randall and Jefferson Salvini Randall. For a man who had lived most of his life without children, their births were a gift he cherished deeply. In them, he found a renewed sense of purpose and joy, even as time reminded him of his own mortality. When Tony passed away in 2004, Heather inherited his estate valued at over $1 million. But far more significant than wealth was the story they left behind. A love that endured skepticism, challenged conventions, and proved that connection can sometimes bridge even the widest divides. Heather Harlan, born October 27, 1970, stepped into public view largely through her marriage to Tony Randall. Yet her life had its own beginnings before their paths crossed. With a background in media, she began her career interning at NBC, where she gained early experience in broadcasting. But in 1995, her life changed course when she married Tony, a man 50 years her senior and already a celebrated figure in American entertainment. After their marriage, Heather chose to step away from the pursuit of a career, devoting herself instead to her role as wife and mother. Her world revolved around building a warm, stable home, raising their 2 children, and being a constant support to Tony in his later years. Despite the public scrutiny that surrounded their age difference, those closest to them often described their marriage as deeply affectionate and surprisingly balanced. Heather brought youth, energy, and companionship into Tony's final chapter, while he gave her a life anchored in wisdom, devotion, and love. When Tony passed away in 2004, Heather faced the heartbreak of losing her partner far sooner than most. Yet she carried his memory forward with quiet dignity, channeling her grief into preserving his legacy. She became active in philanthropic work, especially in causes tied to the arts and education, values that had defined Tony's life and career. Though Heather never sought the spotlight, her role in Tony Randall's story was profound. She was not only the keeper of his final years, but also the guardian of the family they built together. Her journey is one of quiet resilience and devotion, a reminder that love can shape a life as much as ambition or fame. One of the most unexpected turns in Tony Randall's life came not on stage or screen, but within the quiet walls of family. After marrying Heather Harlan in 1995, Randall, by then well into his 70s, became a father for the first time. In 1997, at the age of 77, he welcomed a daughter, Julia Lorette. A year later, at 78, his son Jefferson Salvini was born. Their arrival was not just a new chapter, it was a startling reinvention of a man long associated with urbane bachelor roles and sharp comedic timing. Suddenly, Tony Randall, the seasoned actor, was cradling infants in his arms. The decision to embrace fatherhood so late in life captured the public's fascination. Many admired his choice, calling it proof of his vitality, energy, and devotion to living fully, even in what others considered their twilight years. To them, Randall's joy in becoming a father was a moving example of how love can rewrite expectations. But the decision also drew criticism. Some questioned whether it was fair to his children, wondering if a man approaching 80 could keep pace with toddlers or be present long enough to see them grow. Others speculated on the burdens Heather might bear in raising children so young with a husband so advanced in age. Randall, however, never wavered in his convictions. For decades, he had spoken half-jokingly about his longing for fatherhood, once quipping, "I would love to have children, but I'm too old to have a wife." At last, he had both a partner and a family, and he relished it with a passion that surprised even his closest friends. Far from apologizing, he celebrated the perspective his years gave him, patience, gratitude, and wisdom he might never have had as a younger man. For Randall, these were not disadvantages, but gifts he could pass on to his children. Still, beneath the joy was a quiet tragedy. Randall knew his time with Julia and Jefferson would be brief. Heather later revealed that he was almost obsessed with capturing their moments on film, creating videos of himself and the family so his children would one day have a living memory of their father. He wanted them to know him, she explained, aware that their shared years would be limited. When he died in 2004, Julia was only 7, Jefferson just 6. Heather faced the difficult task of raising their children while keeping Tony's memory alive without drowning in grief. "I didn't want to make the house a shrine and keep the pain so present," she admitted. Instead, she chose balance, holding on to the stories and laughter without letting sorrow consume them. Friends like Jack Klugman and Gary Marshall often visited, sharing warm and funny memories of Tony. so the children would grow up surrounded not by absence, but by living echoes of the father they lost too soon. In the end, Tony Randall's late leap into fatherhood remained both controversial and deeply poignant. It defied convention, stirred debate, and yet in its intimacy revealed something universal, that love and family do not follow a timetable.